95.3 WBEV, powered by Daily Dodge. Let's join Thomas Rayfelt for community comment.
Well, thank you so much, LA, and thank you for joining us on a very special community comment. We are also streaming on Daily Dodge TV, and we are joined with a very good friend, someone that we actually spoke with back in August, Renee Henning, the administrator at Community Care Preschool and Child Care Incorporated. We're also honored to have a preeminent voice when it comes to advocating for early childhood professionals, children, and their parents in the state of Wisconsin, Ruth Schmidt, the executive director of the Wisconsin Early Childhood Association since 2002, I believe.
It's a very long time, since 2002, yes.
It is not that long ago. It's only been 21 years.
Only 21 years.
Well, Renee, we're continuing this conversation that we had back in August when we were talking, at that time we focused more on child care inside of community care. And I got this wonderful interview. I got to smell the smells of community care, taste some of the tastes, and see how things are done in a licensed child care provider. What is the importance of credentials? What is the importance of the pyramid model? Social emotional skills. Why do kids need to learn them?
You were an excellent student, Thomas.
You were a marvelous teacher, and we're kind of taking this conversation a little bit wider, and that's why, Ruth, we have you in the conversation to maybe look at some of the economic numbers, look at the impacts across families, state budgets, and to continue, let's go with something that we mentioned a lot in August, and this is coming up in January as a consequence back in June of the Republican held legislature voting against continuing child care counts, and this is a COVID-era program. What exactly, Renee, and Ruth as well, if you want to maybe fill in, what exactly is child care counts? Why is it so important to what you do, Renee?
Child care counts was the way that the state of Wisconsin chose to take the federal dollars that were given to us as COVID relief money, because when COVID hit and we needed to shut down certain places, certain child care centers closed for good, and some were struggling because their enrollments had to drop. You know, when we had to stay home because we didn't know what this virus was capable of, it was a lot of unknowns. So the childcare industry was already in turmoil for all kinds of societal reasons. But when COVID hit, it's like ripping the Band-Aid off of a wound. It just really disseminated financially the business models. So as we kind of learned more about the virus and time went on, and then things, we became essential, so we were allowed to stay open. So some child care centers were able to take in income, but they still had a drastic reduction in enrollment because not everybody could be out. You remember like if you worked in an office and you weren't essential, you still had to either work from home. Well, people kept their kids at home. So child care counts supported us financially. So I know that for me personally, for the program is 18 months long. It ends in January of 2024. So for this time frame, I've been able to actually be able to afford to pay my teachers a livable wage. I was able to fund a new boiler when my boiler went out at the dead of winter. I had enough money to be able to do that, to continue to care for my kids. So that money stabilized my business model. So now that it's leaving, it's becoming a big challenge to find financially, dollars and cents wise, how to make up that difference in my budget.
Did you find that your business model was stable before child care counts?
I feel like I was fortunate in this community that I was relatively full and with a waiting list when COVID hit, and I was able to maintain just the right amount of enrollment. I feel lucky. I'm not, that's not the norm for every child care center. So for me, COVID was a little bit helpful financially in that it didn't disseminate us and close us for good like others did.
Can I just jump in a quick sec? I just want to sort of put another little bit of a frame on this. So prior to COVID, so 2019, 2018, 2017, and on, right? You could just keep going back. We have a significant gap in care in Wisconsin. The Bipartisan Policy Center had looked at gap of care across, I think they did 35 states. Wisconsin was one of them. And in Wisconsin, what this means is that based on the books regulated slots of care, we lacked care for about 40% of children under the age of 5 who had all available parents in the workforce, right? So this is an assumption that those children need to be in care somewhere, right, while their parents are at work. So prior to COVID, we had a significant shortage of childcare. Childcare was already in crisis. We were already doing advocacy. We were already pushing for investments into childcare, right? And I think the piece that I want to reference that Renee didn't say yet is that when COVID hit, a lot of industries shut down. The governor directed a lot of industries in Wisconsin to shut down. Childcare was not one of those, right? So childcare was encouraged to stay open so that it could provide care for essential worker families, right? Our school buildings closed down. And so this was also a time, I think, where working parents realized, oh, wow, schools allow me to work, right? I can have my children in a classroom, I can go to work, same as childcare, right? So it was this new awakening about the value of childcare, the importance of childcare, because without childcare programs willing to stay open with reduced enrollments just to serve essential worker families, without that happening, we would have had much more significant health crises on our hands, public health crises on our hands as a state. Childcare was absolutely critical in that.
Ruth, you are part of the Wisconsin Early Childhood Association. You've been there since 2002. When do you think that this child care crisis started in the state of Wisconsin? Did it start while you were there, before you started?
It's been going on prior to my being at Wisconsin Early Childhood Association, yeah.
I just got in 2006 into the field, and I think I came in within the 2008 market crash, and that was really difficult. So I think it's been in a brewing turmoil in the whole time I've been.
The dilemma is our state and our country haven't yet, I think we're starting to, but haven't looked at childcare as a public good. And so when you start to look at childcare as a public good, you start to realize, oh wow, we should be putting public money into it because it's a public good. The same as our public schools are a public good, so is childcare, right? Parents cannot work without care for their kids, right? Almost every other wealthy nation has figured this out, and they invest in it, and they give parents the supports they need so that their children are taken care of, so they can work. They've got paid time off. They've got a lot of policies that we don't have. We look at children as you had the child,
You
your
take care of it.
responsibility, you pay for it.
Right.
Even though it's our current workforce, it's our future workforce, and childcare is there to serve both needs.
We have some very interesting models showing how the breakdown of the industry, what we kind of touched on last, or in August, how the numbers don't make sense. One thing that was interesting, childcare accounts, the Wisconsin Early Childhood Action Needed Survey, it was distributed among providers, and it found for nearly half the residents, childcare accounts comprised nearly 20 to 30% of your revenue. How is this, we mentioned last time that you are planning on raising rates as a consequence.
It's exactly true. When we sat down, I'm a nonprofit, so we had a board of directors, and that helps me navigate the budget. And when we looked at the dollars and cents, when the child care accounts money would leave, it would leave us with about a 20% hole in the budget. And sure enough, that's coming true. So in September, I raised rates 12%, and I'm forecasting raising rates another 12% in February.
And Renee, haven't you mentioned that for Dodge County, this will be the first time that the cost of infant care exceeds $15,000 a year?
Yes.
And it's because of needing to raise those rates to cover costs that all the rest of us experienced increases during COVID. And childcare
Exactly.
put those increases
We-
into what they use childcare accounts.
We didn't raise rates during the COVID years because we were getting support. And so, in fact, even early on in the COVID crisis, when we began to get funds, we even gave different deep discounts to parents. Like we gave that back to them early on, and then we just froze rates. Is almost like I didn't want to kick parents while they were down. You know, we're all navigating this, and I was getting support. So to me, it was just good business sense to say to the families, "Hey, I'm here to support you too." But now that this investment is leaving us, unless I close, I mean, you have to make the dollars and the cents work. So.
And when it comes down to support, and we're trying to see some sort of bipartisan collaboration in the legislature, and we're not really seeing much of that right now. We had that in August 8th. General Evers called a special legislature into session for the 20th, and Speaker Robert Voss of Rochester rejected the session as convening as required, but adjourned less than a minute later. And Evers continued and sent a letter to State Senator Dan Fine on October 3rd, mentioning the sheer impact. And Ruth, you're familiar with this letter and what Evers said in some of these projections. How crippling will it be in January if we're not recuperating or trying to cover some of the costs of child care accounts? What's going to happen to child care in Wisconsin?
Two things come to mind for me. So the numbers that I think were in that letter were pretty startling, right? And indeed, surveys do show that providers are saying, 34% of providers in Wisconsin are saying that they are considering closing, right? Now, there's a long way between I'm closing and I'm considering closing, right? Childcare is notorious for having really amazing women like Renee and her staff who bend over backwards to provide care for children because they know it's what their community needs, they know it's what families need, and they are not going to let families down, right? But we take advantage of that. And so we see that these big numbers, 30% of programs potentially closing, right? Up to 80-some thousand children in Wisconsin potentially losing care. That is probably the far end of what it could look like. But what we're seeing, and Renee was talking about it, right? We are seeing really dramatic rate increases in childcare programs. Our surveys are indicating close to 90% of childcare programs in the state of Wisconsin are either actively raising their rates now or will definitely be raising their rates. And in some cases, Renee gave this scenario, I think you said 10% now and potentially 12% in February or something like that. That's normative, right? That is what we're seeing. We may even see it go as high as 40% in some markets of the state. Childcare used federal COVID relief dollars to contain their costs and not pass on big expenses to families. That money's gone, the expenses are still there. Childcare programs need to find a way to cover it.
Let's bring up that the graphic of the broken business model. And if you're watching the Daily Dodge stream, we're going to give you a couple moments to just pick your jaw up from the ground. Why exactly the current iteration of Wisconsin child care is unsustainable for caregivers and parents? And Ruth, just looking through some of the regulations that are in effect, teachers can only cover so many kids. Classrooms can only be so large. So there is a cap of how much coverage can actually be handled in one facility.
Correct. And there's a lot of really, really compelling good reasons why we do that. Child safety is clearly, I think Renee, you would agree with me, right? Child safety is the most important part of the equation, right? And so in Wisconsin, what that looks like, and in many states in our country, what that looks like is a requirement that you must have 1 adult to 4 babies in a classroom, right? 4 infants. As the children get older, those ratios go up slightly, but still not dramatically, right? It's nothing like what you see in our, 5th grade classrooms in public schools, right? These are young children. They're not mobile. they can't take care of their own needs. They can't communicate effectively. I mean, they do communicate, but certainly not necessarily the way that's easiest to understand.
Exactly.
And so we have really high standards of what we require childcare to do because they are taking care of our babies. They're taking care of parents. Parents are dropping off every day. This is the most important thing in my life, and I'm dropping it off to Renee to take care of for a day. I want my child, over every other thing, to be safe. And that means I want an adult that's on the ground with that child, playing with that child, interacting with that
You
child.
need an intentional adult.
Thank you.
To be with that child.
Yes.
To nurture that child. So it's safety, of course. That's your basic needs. If you want to talk about Maslow's hierarchy of needs, if we want to go to psychology class, safety. This is our basic needs, our basic
Yes.
needs. But then when you're looking for small children, the specialty there comes in. Building how to build a relationship, unlocking that unique potential of that child. Every single child is different, and at this age their brains are growing and changing, and you've got to be there observing and going right along with them every single day. I've been in the classroom from 6 a.m. to, well, yesterday it was noon. So I have some very, very recent experience with 4-year-olds that I can report back on. That when they say they want you to have more children in your care, and I've had to deal with a number of, I'm the only one in the classroom, right? And I have a friend who doesn't understand the direction, so I need to give him a little extra help because I can see the meltdown. It's coming, the volcano's coming, and these two didn't get along, and he took my block, and then, oh, but wait, it's almost time for us to eat. Oh, but I have to sanitize the table. And, oh, you have to go potty? Oh, okay. Oh, well, now he needs a little help in the potty. Okay, I got to remember that. Okay, oh, and don't forget, oh, wait, no, wait, oh, we have to pick up our toys before we leave. Do you see this? So when the legislature says, you should have 2 more. And I'm talking about 4-year-olds. They can go potty. They can be relatively independent. They can put their clothes on themselves usually, But transitioning to go outside, you want to add 2 more? You want to add, really?
Yeah.
No, let's talk about this. When we look at our ratios, they're based in scientific research, which is developmentally appropriate practice. So when our lawmakers are saying, no, we're going to help you, and we're going to make it so you can make more money. But here, so I have 2 more, 2 more under 2. Add that to your group, and then in the next group, add a couple more, and then add a couple more. That's not what these children deserve.
And in states that have done these things, in states that have increased child-adult ratios, and lowered the ages of teaching assistants and things like that, we're not seeing huge changes, right? It's not the salve that's gonna cool the fester of what's going on in childcare. It's just not gonna do it, right? And you will lose teachers. We already have a childcare exodus, right? We have people leaving this field because there's so many other more lucrative positions they can get into. They can get access to benefits, right? This workforce doesn't get access to benefits. The pay, if you looked at that graphic that was up, that childcare program was looking at $230,000 left to pay 10 people. You do the math, right? I can't live off of $23,000 a year.
No.
I mean,
No.
without benefits. That doesn't even include payroll taxes, like none of that, right?
You can't have a car payment, rent for a decent apartment. So why should the childcare workforce not be able to have a family, have a pet, own a car, maybe own a home? Wow. The childcare community that's not a reality for people who work in this industry. Those things, you can't afford to have them.
I do want to say that whole description made me incredibly anxious just thinking about that. We got
About my morning?
boys, it's just chaos around here. And then you're adding 2 more kids on top of that. I got to calm myself down. But let's talk more about this workforce. We have another graphic here about Wisconsin's early childhood workforce, and what we really see: wages education and passion. We're seeing people that are staying in this workforce because they are passionate. It's not about the money. It's about wanting to work with kids. And we're also seeing that the workforce is highly educated as opposed to other industries, and that's a bit of an outlier. What else do we see about childcare as a workforce, Ruth, that
So,
is a little unusual?
Childcare is the most highly educated, lowest paid, put those two pieces together, profession in our state, right? High school graduates in Wisconsin, just with a high school diploma, the average wage, the last time I looked, this was probably 2 years ago, was about $17 an hour. That is fully about $5 an hour more than a teacher, maybe not in your program, but a teacher with an associate's degree working in a childcare program, making $12 an hour, no benefits, right?
Yep.
Over 55% of this field has an associate's degree. And it's because they know there is, you were talking about brain science, right? They need to understand what's going on. When she's talking about, if you went into that classroom that she was just describing, you wouldn't have the tools
No.
and the clue to figure out, what do I do first? What's the most pressing need? What does this child need? How do I respond to it appropriately, right? We need teachers that understand that stuff and that are passionate about those kids. And you see the data, it does show it, right? Like, people stay in this field despite. We need to change it from despite to also be because they're passionate about kids, but also because they can make a living doing this work. And shame on us, but shame on us for thinking that it's okay for us to continue to have a system of care where teachers are living off of food stamps on Badger Care because they can't afford these things for themselves because the wage structure is so low in this field.
As a director, I've seen many teachers, some come, some go, for various reasons. I've always seen when a teacher gets more education, whether it be a specialty course in the pyramid model, or whether it be she's going back to school for her associate's degree, or I've watched her every summer come back for college to work in the summer. She's getting her teaching degree. The more educated, the better product that comes out of that classroom every single time. So the more you know, the more you learn, the more experience you gain for early education, it pays dividends in what comes out of that classroom. So when people say, "Oh, I just love the kids," it's kind of like we're taking advantage again of the good-hearted nature that's been in childcare for 50-some years, But this is an educated field, and it needs to be elevated to the degree that it deserves. These are teachers, these are brain builders. That was my poster when I advocated at the Capitol the other week. I'm a brain builder. People gave me a look, but they got them thinking. That's what we're doing.
That's what it's about.
Yeah.
What percentage of the childcare workforce is female versus male? How does that break down?
Ooh, do you have that, Ruth? I'm sure it's
The
stark.
percentage is about 98% female.
98%.
About 98% female in our state, yes. And that, not just in our state, right, across the country. This is a gender issue. This is a workforce of women.
Absolutely.
This is a workforce overrepresented by Black and brown women, right? So it is a gender issue, absolutely, for sure.
Men have so much to give in early education, and when everyone I've ever met that's in this field they bring a spectacular. It just brings so much, and it's a shame that it's so underrepresented because they have a lot to give. But some people, there's this quirk in their head that if they see a guy coming on and being in an early childhood setting, like he must be odd, or he can't be a nurturing individual, or there's some kind of, it's not true. kids need males and females in their lives, intentional adults who can care for them and help them grow. So,
Let me push you on that just a second.
Yeah.
Okay, I don't disagree with you. However, I would add to this that I think it's a compensation issue, right? Like, you start
yeah,
paying
sure.
teachers in this field comparable to what even our K-12
We-
teachers are making, which isn't great,
Absolutely,
mind you,
Ruth.
that's not great, right? But you start paying teachers in this field what they're worth, and suddenly we would probably see more men coming into this field, right?
sure.
The same as,
Yeah.
we saw changes in wages with bank tellers, right? When it was only women, low wages. When men started coming into that field, wages went up, right? Like, you're looking at me like, I'm not sure I believe you, but there are correlations,
You
right?
could talk about the
This
nursing
is-
field too. The nursing
Absolutely.
field absolutely used to be dominated by females, but now having a male nurse in the ICU, it's not an unusual circumstance. Having a male teach in a setting like mine, that's pretty rare.
And so part of the challenge is we have legislators on both sides of the political aisle, right, that are looking at this conversation. And I may regret saying this, but oftentimes these conversations are happening without talking necessarily about what is best for the children, right? And what is best for the workforce that's providing this care, right? We talk a ton about childcare right now. It is turn on your TV, turn on your radio, open the newspaper, you are going to be hearing about childcare in Wisconsin. It is a hot topic right now. It's a political hot potato. It's pitting governor against legislature, Republicans against Dems. And it shouldn't, right?
it
just
absolutely
shouldn't.
shouldn't.
And so when we look at this, solving this problem purely from the perspective of, oh my goodness, we don't have enough care, we need more care, how do we fix it? We put more kids in the classroom, right? Right, that's what we're gonna do. We're gonna put more kids in the classroom. You'll get a little bit more money, Renee, right?
Yeah, because I'm in it for the money.
This is not an industry that is calling for itself to be unregulated.
No.
Not at all. This is an industry that understands the need for high health and safety standards in care and understand the value of what they're bringing to their jobs every day.
If I'm giving you a funny look, Ruth, it's because I do have a very strange face, but also, it's also, but in 2023, it's really hard for myself to just believe that because this is an industry that is 98% female, is that possibly a reason why there is such an impasse of not getting anything done in our legislature? Like, that's where I'm starting to lead right now, and I just find that very difficult to believe.
Well, Ruth, you were a little hesitant, but if I may speak about facts, this package of bills that was passed by the Assembly, the Department of Children and Families wasn't contacted about their feedback on it before it came to a hearing on the floor. The Wisconsin Early Childhood Association wasn't contacted about, hey, these are bills. Can you comment? Am I right or am I wrong? It was on the floor of the hearing that the legislators heard first we oppose these, we oppose these.
Yeah.
So if you really do want to care for the youngest in the state and you philosophically feel like their lives are important, when they're born, what happens to them now? And you didn't even consult the people in the state who are the leading authorities on how to care for them. How else would you spin that? That's what happened. I find it very disturbing.
There is a lot to unpack. We have a surplus of information. No, this is all a positive thing. That's exactly what this is for. And we do have another surplus that we have to discuss at our next break, and that is the Wisconsin state surplus, one of the largest in the state's history. We'll cover that, and we'll also talk about some of these bills more specifically that we've kind of been alluding on as we're joined with Renee Henning, the administrator at Community Care Preschool and Child Care Incorporated, and Ruth Schmidt, the executive director of the Wisconsin Early Childhood Association. We'll be back with more community comment on your hometown station, 95.3 WBEV, powered by Daily Dodge.
You're listening to 95.3 WBEV, powered by Daily Dodge. Let's return to community comment with Thomas Rayfeld.
Well, thank you so much, LA, and thank you for joining us. We are discussing child care with Renee Henning, the administrator at Community Care Preschool, and Ruth Schmidt, the executive director of the Wisconsin Early Childhood Association. So I was having some difficulty trying to figure out the exact number of the budget surplus. I contacted the Department of Administration yesterday, talked to Tatiana, and she sent me an email that according to the opening balance for the fiscal year of 23 to 24, it's right around $6.8 billion. And that number is estimated prior to some other releases, but we're not going to get the final general fund balance until next week around October 16th. But when we're talking about how much money is available in the fund, how do we want to use this surplus? I believe Senator Ballwig wanted to use this for tax cuts across the entire spectrum. And I think Governor Evers actually vetoed most of that, leaving in those tax cuts for the bottom brackets. But when we're talking about how we want to invest in Wisconsin using this budget surplus, Ruth, looking at childcare, what do we need? What do we need to have successful childcare? What do we need to pull ourselves from this childcare crisis in the state of Wisconsin?
So seriously, what do we need? Or what do we need within childcare counts? Two different things.
What would you like to see from your experience? And maybe that's
I
opening a
mean,
very wide door.
I think that is open. It's a huge wide door, right? And so my blue sky thinking is we should publicly fund childcare for all of our kids, right? Like that's my blue sky thinking, and understanding that is like light years away, right? Right now, what we need at a minimum is the funding that is going to keep things from getting worse, right? And that would be the investment that the governor has put out there. It's about $340 million across the biennium. And in an ongoing way, it becomes, I believe it's somewhere around $250 million a year in revenue to continue to fund this really critical core part of infrastructure for childcare in what's called childcare counts. I don't care what you call it. Don't call it childcare counts. Call it something else. We just need a deep investment in childcare. Is that going to mean that childcare is going to be cheap for families? No, it's not, right? But will it keep Renee from losing staff? Probably. Will it keep families from needing to leave Renee's program because they can't afford it so that they can continue to get good care? Yes. Those are the kinds of things. And to me, when you look at a surplus, right now the state of Wisconsin puts in $16 million a year of state revenue into childcare. That's $50 per child under the age of 5. We can do better. I want my tax dollars to go towards supporting more than that for the youngest kids in our state. The other piece that we hear in this is, considering this ask, this $340 million ask as a bailout, we're going to bail out childcare. This is not bailing out childcare. This is bailing out every employer that employs the people that have children in Renee's program, right? This is a bailout of every industry in the state of Wisconsin that can't hire people because there's no care, that don't want to raise their own wages because they want their bottom line to be productive. That's what this is a bailout for. This is something that lifts every other industry in the state of Wisconsin.
I've had other legislative offices say that, well, we don't feel like we want to bail out any particular one industry, and you're an industry, so like we wouldn't do it to the widget makers down the street, so we're not going to do it to you. I think that's superficial thinking. Yeah, to think of it in those terms.
So you mentioned $16 million. That's about $50 a student. What number would you like to see that? I mean, besides for the blue sky thinking, what would be a more appropriate investment to properly insulate parents against these rising costs we're seeing from the ending of child care accounts?
Oh, Todd, I wasn't prepared for these questions. This is a hard one. I mean, you could look at what are we spending per pupil on a child in 4-year-old kindergarten, right? In Wisconsin. I'm not positive what that number is now, but I'm assuming it's close to $7,000 a year.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Let's do $7,000 a year per child, right? I can tell you right now, that's a whole lot more than what's being asked for in funding for childcare counts.
A whole lot more.
Right?
We've been discussing of the GOP, the Republican-based plans, and there was a hearing last week, October 5th, the Senate Committee on Mental Health, Substance Abuse Prevention, Children and Families. And there were quite a few bills that were signed and co-sponsored, like Assembly Bill 389. And this was a bill that was going to increase the size from classrooms. So I believe that 2 employees could provide care to 9 to 12 children. So we're talking about 6 children for 1 child care professional. And this is kind of what we mentioned in our first segment.
How old are those children? Did I miss that?
They mentioned here
Oh, is that about the family child?
large family child care center in the same way. It doesn't give an exact number. I believe it was right around 2 and above.
I am not
So,
the family
that's-
child
I'll
care
jump in on this for
expert.
just
I'll
a
let you
second.
defer.
So this bill is looking at allowing there to be up to 12 children in a family childcare home. So this would be if Renee's providing care out of her home, right? She
Okay.
doesn't, that's not her model. But there are family childcare programs across the state of Wisconsin. It's a critical model for rural Wisconsin, a lot of your listening area.
Yes.
It's a critical model, right? Because there's not the density of population to support a large center, but there is to support multiple family childcare homes. This piece of legislation would be looking at large family homes, which would allow for them to serve more children in their home than what they currently can, with another adult in the home. And this is one of those bills that I wouldn't necessarily be opposed to, as long as they turn to our early childhood experts for input into what should those ratios look like? What should that licensing standard be? But the concept alone of allowing there to be larger regulated family childcare homes is not necessarily in and of itself a bad concept.
As long as it's done right with safety in mind.
And that kind of segues into Assembly Bill 390. And this one is quite concerning because this is about lowering the age of assistant child care teachers. Right now, it's 17 to 18, and you have to take a special course. There's
Yes.
some additional training required for this.
So I actually have an individual in my center who is 17, but she has taken the coursework at Beaver Dam High School that was the assistant child care course, and then she earned her DPI sponsored certificate, which meant she did a little extra on observing, so she did more hands-on experience with children to earn that. So the licensing rule is you have to be 18 to work in a high school diploma, unless you have done what I just described. That is a great model to me because I know that I, as a mentor and a coach, I have a responsibility to this young teacher to help guide her. There are certain parameters that she can only work in. She's not going to be all by herself with a group of squirrely 4 and 5-year-olds with one of them having special needs and whatnot. Do you know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. So this rule just really, this bill as it's written really gets under my skin because we're going to put that responsibility potentially on 16-year-olds and be unsupervised without a mentor, like somebody like me who's got experience, who can, you know, kind of guide that young person along. I want people to pick this field. I don't want them to come in and be thrown to the wolves with children without the experience that I've gained or that education has taught them. Sure, when a family's going to head out on the town to go catch a movie and go out to eat, and the really nice young gal or guy who lives up the street, you're going to call them over to watch your 3 kids at home while you're out. I get that. There's a use for that. But this is day-to-day care in an early childhood setting. And again, when we're talking about quality care, that 16-year-old hasn't gained that experience yet. And they don't have that knowledge base yet. So I again fail to see how this current bill, as it's written, is going to help me. Not to mention, typically 16-year-olds are in school.
Nothing was mentioned about that in the bill from what I read.
No,
it did
no.
also remove restrictions that a supervising assistant teacher may provide sole supervision to the group of children in full-day centers only during opening and closing hours and during the nap time as well. So, I mean, and there was another bill, 388, and that has to deal with loans going towards home licensed childcare providers. But when you Ruth, when you're looking at this package of deregulation within childcare, what are some of the things that snap out at you?
The red flags for me.
Yeah.
So, first I want to say the fact that there's a package of bills that's been put forward, at a minimum shows that this issue is very concerning on both sides of the political aisle, right? This conversation is ongoing in our state. There is going to be a Senate hearing on those bills next week to hear from the public for testimony in terms of what people who work in this field might think, what parents might think, right? So the fact that there's a package of bills that's been presented, and they are not all bad. They don't do what is needed. What is needed is an investment in childcare counts. What's needed is a major public investment in childcare, right? Period. That is what we need, right? These bills, there was $15 million that was passed in the budget in a joint finance supplemental fund to establish a loan program through Wisconsin Economic Development Corporation for childcare, right? So this is the money, we're talking about a loan program for family childcare, for group programs, right? First of all, this field doesn't need loans.
No.
This field needs grants. They need money in their pocket. They don't need to have to worry about, do I pay it back, right? They don't make enough money to do that.
Even if they're interest-free.
Even interest-free.
As I testified to the assembly against this bill, I said, I don't know that I can pay that back. So great
Period.
that it's interest-free, but in the way that I run money in my own personal life, and as anybody in the local area knows, my husband is a banker and he's in finance management. So we live within our means. So thank you, state of Wisconsin, for giving me a no interest loan. How am I going to pay that back? I can't in good conscience take on more debt knowing that the future of my business is so teetering. Grant? You betcha. I'll write a grant. I'll do the research. I'll do the homework. I can absolutely put that money to really good use in this community. When I'm looking forward to possibly partnering with the local school district to expand childcare to one of our elementary schools that's going to close in the near future, absolutely I could use that. But I'll have to pay it back? How about we look at this as a grant?
And the other thing is, Renee, like, the reason for paying it back is so it stays this $15 million pot of money that they can give out, take
And
it
that
back,
you-
give out, right? It's a revolving
Sure,
loan fund,
sure,
right?
Sure, right. yeah.
Because why? Because we can't put another 15 million in the next year? Like, do we really not have another 15 million that we could just continue to replenish a grant program for childcare? We do.
Well,
We
and
should.
if it's revolving and it's supposed to be replenished, and I'm complaining, how are other centers going to, like, how long is it going to take?
Right.
How is this Shark Tank? They're not going to get a return on their investment real fast.
So
We can't afford
the
to
concept
pay that back.
of setting revenue aside that can go to help with startup or expansion or renovations in a program is a good concept, right? There's a lot of good thinking behind
Absolutely.
that, right? Do it differently. Do it so that providers don't have to take their very minimal, if any, ending the year in the black and pay it back, right? That just doesn't, it's not good sense for this industry.
No.
There's a bill on setting up childcare reimbursement accounts for families that, like, a grandparent could contribute to, an aunt or uncle could contribute to, and then the parent can use that to purchase care. And people can contribute to it and have it be tax deductible. That's good.
That's
right? We think
creative.
that's great. The bills that become problematic, especially, are the ones that are talking about lowering the age of the assistant teachers, which Renee was just talking about at length. And there were several programs last week that
It's been a
whenever
couple
the
weeks
assembly
now.
hearing that testified in opposition to that, right? Because they know it's not good for kids, and they know it's not good for the 16-year-olds taking care of the children. The other one that is really problematic is changing the group size ratios, right? And this is where, and if you pair these bills together, so if you take this bill that expands group sizes, so it would allow Renee, for instance, in a group program, to have one adult with 6 babies in a classroom, okay? Which, heck no. I mean,
No, I wouldn't do it.
right. I mean, it is so, that bill is in part insulting to this field, right?
Okay.
This field knows what good care looks like, right? And trust me, what happens in Wisconsin is not like this is the gold standard of care happening anywhere in our country. It's not, right? There's good care available. These bills are not designed to help promote growth of good care in our communities.
Agreed.
And that's highly problematic.
What are these bills in this package of bills? What is it designed to do in Wisconsin?
Go ahead, Renee.
I don't know if I can say anything nice.
That's fine then. We can take that road.
I am in opposition of these bills. There's not a whole lot about it that I can get behind. I'm still a little flabbergasted. In fact, I was at the Capitol testifying, and then I was at the press conference where the Senate Democrats proposed that they were going to put forth this separate legislation because of the gavel in, gavel out, and they didn't get where they wanted to go. So they came up with, okay, this is what we're going to do. And then I was interviewed afterwards from the Examiner, and this is disrespectful. That's the words I use. This is disrespectful that our legislature is going in the face of developmentally appropriate practice. We could be a leader in the country. We could choose so many other routes that put kids' needs and what that special time in childhood is all about. We could do better, but instead we're going to lower the ratios for adults to children when we're telling you that that's not good practice. Mm-hmm. Like, I fail to see the logic in why these bills are good. I fail to see it.
I think too that we have a shortage of care. We do. Like, no one's denying that. We don't have enough care. Care is too expensive. No one denies that care is too expensive. Mm-hmm. And no one denies that nobody's getting rich in this field, right? If people could get rich doing child care, we would not have a shortage of care, period. It just wouldn't happen, right?
Right.
So what is unfortunate in these bills is that it's an attempt to solve a problem. It's an attempt to fix capacity. It's an attempt to fix affordability. It's proven not to work, first of all. And second of all, it does not take into account what is best for children. And it is a little bit of like playing a game of chicken with our kids, right? With our kids' lives is sort of what we're doing here.
And when you're saying that it's proven to not work, this is based off programs implemented in other states and seeing how that has worked. And
might I add, there are other states that are making investments, right? North Dakota, another really red state, is putting, I think, $66 million, and they only have 39,000 kids under the age of 5. We have way more, 300 some thousand kids under the age of 5. We have a lot more kids.
Yeah.
They're putting $66 million a year of their own tax revenue into childcare, right?
And therein lies, I think, the ask that we're in the industry really pushing for is we're asking the state to make an investment. Right. And you'll hear but we're putting 90 million or whatever figures. But that's what the federal government gives us mostly. The federal government gives us a chunk of money to do good things for children with, and there's a whole host of programs. And some childcare stuff is in there, but the federal money has ties to it. Like, you must do this, you must do that. You must have a quality rating system. You must do federal FBI background checks, like those things. And so we get money from the government for those. So I'm here to say what we're asking for is the state to make a historic investment themselves, not because the federal government attached strings to the money that they're getting. And what you said is other states are picking up on that. Other states are making progress. Other states are doing it. I believe Minnesota also did too, historic investment.
Large. It's like.
Just this last budget.
I want to say it's over 300 million a year is what they're adding in general purpose. And let me say, and this is the other thing, like Minnesota is doing this, and maybe North Dakota's is the same, I'm not positive, but they're doing it for compensation of this workforce, right? So don't think of it as like bailing out an industry, but think of it of trying to like level the playing field for an industry, right? This industry does not have enough, this is a revenue issue, right? We don't have enough revenue to pay staff to take care of kids, period. We just don't. And I think our legislature is doing this kind of waiting game. Let's see who can hold out longer. So we're going to hold out and not put money into this. And we're going to cross our fingers that this whole concept of failed market, broken business model is not real, right? We're crossing our fingers, and we are going to hope that programs will stay open. And here's the sad fact. Many will, right? They will, because that's what childcare does. They will cut costs, they will cut wages, they will cut benefits, they'll cut, so that they can stay open. And what I'm saying and what Renee is saying is it's not good for our children. It's just not good for our children.
There's another part of this as we actually get another graphic here. This is from Ready Nation. And the headline of this is $122 billion, the growing annual cost of the infant toddler child care crisis. And this cost is, as shown by the graphic, it's a little distributed between parents, businesses, and taxpayers. And I believe it goes further, saying that families lose $78 billion per year in foregone earnings, job search expenses. Employers are losing about $23 billion, as you mentioned a little bit earlier, Ruth, about bailing out businesses, and taxpayers losing $21 billion in lower federal and state local tax revenue. So there's a real cost in not investing. I can't think of any other industry that is like that has such a huge economic impact in both the immediate and the future than childcare.
It's kind of like when we say with no childcare, there's no workforce. We have T-shirts made with that slogan on them, you know. If we don't exist, I mean, we're the backbone of the workforce.
Renee, what % of parents that are dropping children off with you work?
All of them.
All of them, right?
I do.
And so are they dropping their children off so they can go to work?
Yes. So back in the day, we would keep a few spots open, and when somebody called to inquire, I'd say, so are you looking for a preschool experience? Because, I mean, 2.5, 3 years old, some people want to get their kids involved with some sort of structured social interaction. So I used to be able to, okay, so what are you looking for? I don't have room for that. Every single family that's coming in, nobody's doing that. They are all heading out to the workforce 3, 4, or 5 days a week. And it's
And you have a waiting list?
2 parent families or single parent families. All of them. I have a waiting list. Yes, for infants, the waiting list now is into next summer. And all the other classrooms are filled. And I think for me, that's happened over time. And since I take care of the spectrum from 6 weeks to, the kindergarten till you head out the door, they come in and they stay because they just naturally keep filling as they get older and the group sizes increase. So I can't help anybody. I don't have any room.
And I think if I can add to this, as though I wouldn't, I mean, I feel like I'm just like Nobody's waiting.
Jump right in, Ruth.
So, like, to me, this is also a question, can we do a both and, right? Like, we've got a lot of surplus money. Can we possibly do something on tax package and something constructive on childcare? Not the current package of what's moving through the Senate, not what passed the Assembly. Can we possibly come up with something that says, we understand the value of childcare, we understand this is hitting families across our entire state, every community, every single community. Can we find a way to say, we can do this here, and we can do this here? We've got a lot of surplus money. We have a lot of tax money in our state. Let's try and do something that is a win-win. Republicans win, childcare wins. Is there a way we can possibly like depoliticize this, meet in the middle? It's a skill we try and teach our kids, right? Like
Absolutely.
how to work well with others.
Is it that C
Absolutely
word?
is.
Is it compromise? Is that the word we're looking for?
We teach the kids how to come up with solutions for social problems in everyday classroom living. Why can we not do that here with this bigger problem? Maybe that seems juvenile, but at the root of it, it's not. We need to do right by the youngest in our communities. We absolutely do.
Well, and you do find yourself wondering, and this isn't to blast a political party. Like, I honestly do believe both sides of the political aisle know we have a childcare problem. They know we need to do something. Mm-hmm. I think there's an interest, honestly, on both sides of the political aisle. The problem is it's the political aisle, right? Like, that's the problem, right? North Dakota does it because they are a solid red state, right? We're this purple state-ish, right? We've got an executive branch that's Democratic, and we've got a legislature. Both houses are controlled by Republicans, and it's really unfortunate that this issue is kind of getting stuck in the middle of that, and because kids are not political, you know, they aren't. We should be figuring out a way to fix this.
We are going to have one final segment in our conversation with Renee Henning, the administrator at Community Care Preschool, and Ruth Schmidt, the executive director of the Wisconsin Early Childhood Association. Maybe we'll get to a very positive article from Professor James Heckman, which I really enjoyed. But if you have a question about childcare, if you have a question for Renee, for Ruth, if you have a different opinion about how things, or maybe an idea, we are opening up the phone lines for our third and final segment for community comment. 887-9595 if you have a text, or 885-4446. We'll be back with our third and final segment on Community Comment on 95.3 WBEV, powered by Daily Dodge.
This is 95.3 WBEV, powered by Daily Dodge. Let's return to community comment with Thomas Rayfelt.
Well, thank you, LA, and thank you for joining us. This is our third and final segment with Renee Henning, Administrator at Community Care Preschool, and Ruth Schmidt, the Executive Director of the Wisconsin Early Childhood Association. There is some slight hope here, and one article that really seemed to show the possibility of return on investment, of investing in childcare, was from Professor James Heckman, and he found that this is the most efficient way of reducing deficits, strengthening the economy, and he includes, quote, that the highest rate of return in early childhood development comes from investing as early as possible, birth through age 5, starting at age 3 and 4 is too little and too late. Have you seen positive effects from kids in developmental care? It seems like a very obvious question.
Ask any kindergarten teacher.
Of kids being able to control themselves, modulate themselves?
Absolutely. Many kindergarten teachers that I know on a professional level will be able to, you can point out who's had early childhood experience and who hasn't right away. Not to say parents are their children's first teachers. Parents are the single most important nurturing aspect of that child's life, right? So when we come into then, okay, the secondary, kindergarten teachers can absolutely pick out, well, shoot, I can in a 4K classroom every fall. Anybody who's not had any experience, they just need a little more time to get acclimated to listening to following directions in the classroom, knowing how to control their body, knowing, how to respect other peers, those things we teach from birth on in every single classroom at community care, for example. It's developmentally appropriate, with the 1-year-old teacher, she's still talking about safety and kindness and taking care of our school. Those are our 3 expectations that run as a theme through every single classroom. So, yeah, you can absolutely tell.
And if you look at the Heckman equation, which is what you were talking about, James Heckman, Nobel Prize winning economist, University of Chicago, right? So this study, he looked at longitudinal studies across several different, there was the Abecedarian, the Chicago Preschool Project, there were 3 different projects that he looked like. And he measured it over extensive periods of time. And the things that you find are that if you get children very young into high quality care, and the returns go even up further if you get children who are, I hate saying, living in at-risk situations, right? I don't even know if we could define what that means. But what we're talking about is zip code should not determine the outcome of your life, right?
Yeah.
And so you put children in high-quality early learning settings as soon as possible. And what you see are lower rates of grade retention when they hit the public school system, right? So they are moving up. They're not retained in a class because they're not ready to go advance. Lower rates of remedial education needs in children, higher high school graduation rates, lower rates of teen pregnancy, lower rates of alcohol and tobacco use among teenagers, home ownership goes up, attachment to the labor market goes up, accessing public assistance goes down for children who longitudinally you follow them after they've been in really high quality early childhood settings, right? Attachment to our correction system goes through the roof, right?
Right.
Get kids into high quality care and you will see our correction budget go down, right? And the difficulty is, in political circles, we want immediate returns. We don't want to wait 20 years for the return on our investment. But if we were in a situation to ever do that, you see enormous, for every $1 invested, $17 in savings of public dollars later in life, right? This is a no-brainer in terms of where we should be putting our tax dollars.
Absolutely. Boom.
That was a perfect argument and discussion of that, and why investing is so important for poverty, crime rates, dropout rates, and seeing this massive return of investments. But it does take a while, and the immediate returns might be, well, your kid is not throwing spaghetti against the wall, but that's not really a convincing political argument to make. Is there any other data that makes a convincing argument on this? Because Heckman probably has the clearest with that 7 to 10% per year return on investment based on increased school and career achievements,
Right.
as you mentioned.
Right, yeah. I mean, if you want short-term returns, and you're looking just at our state in terms of short-term returns, the study that you had up from Ready Nation, if you looked at that and you narrow it down to just the economic impact of not having enough care for infants in the state of Wisconsin, that's all, just our youngest babies in the state of Wisconsin, the economic impact of not having enough care for them is $1.9 billion to our state's economy, right? From not having care for our youngest
That's a cost.
babies.
That's a cost. That means that person couldn't get into the workforce. That person
Right.
stayed home to take care of the child. That child didn't go into childcare, like, and all of the things that
Lost
as a business- yep.
wages, lost business productivity, lost tax base, all of those types of things.
So that goes into that 1.9.
Our phone number, 920-885-4446. You can also text us at 887-9595. And we do have a text that just came through. Is this going to result in only the wealthier families being able to afford to have children if we're unable to have childcare accounts or some other proxy program?
That's a pretty great comment. Already look at now today's, if you can think of young people, their 20s-ish to early 30s, who's getting married? Who's buying a house? Are they waiting to get married? Are they not getting married? I mean, the family structure is truly changing. So unless that text makes an excellent point. Yeah, unless you're making 3 figures, dual income, somebody can stay home. Yeah, only the wealthiest are going to have kids.
And I think what's sort of short-sighted about it is we have an aging workforce in Wisconsin. We are not reproducing at the rate we need to, right, to continue to fill
Yeah.
positions into the future. I'm 61, right? I want to retire at some point. I'm going to have expenses as I get older and older and older, and we need people that are coming in to continue to be taxpayers in our economy, right? And I have 2 adult children, right? Neither one of them are talking about having children. And the reason is because it's too expensive. It's too expensive to have children.
I know a number of families who are like, we're just going to have one. We can't, we are making a conscious decision that this will be our only child. Or I have families who call me panicked because they found themselves with their second or third child, and can they find childcare? I've seen panic in mothers' eyes as they come and talk to
Terrible
me.
thing to witness.
It is. But the reality is, hey, wait a minute. Why does this have to be the choices that we're facing in our country, in our state? Why does it have to be this way? I mean, I start to think about, who's going to take care of us, Ruth? I'm 51. I could be your little sister. Who's going to make all the decisions?
Yeah.
Like this is this is not just our industry. I mean, what is the median age at community care of teachers? I mean, I have 4
may not wanna know that.
30-year veterans. So, yeah, some of us are heading into retirement age. But think about the workforce as a whole. Who's coming in to replace jobs? I mean, we need families. We need families and the structure.
And we need people doing all levels of work.
Yes,
Right? We don't just need people doing our highest paying jobs in Wisconsin. We need people doing every level of work, right?
Right.
And when people who are working in middle income jobs, right? Let's say I mean, middle income, I'm defining, like in Wisconsin right now, the state median income is like $61,000 a year, right, for a household. $61,000 a year, has one baby, attending Renee's program, they just spent $15,000 of that household income on one baby, right? Like,
And what was their mortgage cost? Oh, wait, they maybe
and
couldn't
their health
afford to have
insurance
one.
costs, and their
health-
food
and their
costs,
car.
and all of those things, right? So it does become a system of the haves and have-nots. And it also, the other part that I think is concerning in this, do you know, like if you had to guess, the approximate age of parents dropping children off at your program? Youngish?
No,
Oh, okay.
Really?
no.
You're going to blow my argument out of the water.
It's kind of across the board, but it's not the 20-somethings. It's not the
Yeah.
20, 21, 22. That's a minority.
But
I
it's
think we're
probably
thinking older
still-
20, early
Right.
30.
But
That's
we're
where I
still
think we're at.
talking about people who are young in their careers, right? Like,
Yeah.
so your earning potential is the
Yes.
lowest it's going to be for the rest
Yes.
of your life, right? And
And you
your
have this
childcare
huge
costs are really
expense.
high.
That's a really great point, as I am a new empty nester entering into, wow, what do we do? This is kind of different. And I think back, though, I had 3 children in childcare before I worked in childcare. And that was 6 months of 3 children under the age of 5 that we were paying for childcare. And I said my husband's a banker. Boy, yeah, he was counting those 6 months before my oldest went to kindergarten. And then the cost dropped. And then when our youngest turned 2, woo, so yeah, like,
And
There's a difference in-
families are needing to grapple with
Yeah.
this. And wouldn't it be great if families could just be mostly concerned about, I've got a good job I go to, my child is in excellent care, my state supports me in terms of being able to afford that care, right? Like, why can't we take this worry off of
yeah.
the backs of working families? Why can't we put some revenue into this situation?
Parents have a part to play. It's not.
do.
It's not like we're asking the state of Wisconsin to, as your pie in the sky, if everything would be great. I mean, wouldn't that be beautiful? But we are realists too, Ruth. We understand that parents do have a part to play financially in the cost of childcare, but at their lowest place in their careers, their early stages in whatever career choice they are in, and you're having this huge chunk. It's an equation that's really hard for working families.
887-9595 or text for 885-4446. Something that does come to mind is, I'm not sure if it's an economic philosophy. That might be calling it a stretch, but trickle-down economics. And that was a Reagan-era policy, I suppose, of investing businesses would take all these returns, these dividends, and that money would trickle down to the middle and lower classes. And it seems like really investing in childcare, this would be a trickle up economics, that we're investing in families are able to go to work, and we're going to see families being able to grow. And these, for Mr. Heckman's article, we're going to see some positive returns and returns of investment, not just in money, but in overall better and maybe more engaged citizenry as we continue forward.
That's what I'd like to think, especially as you know, I'm a pyramid model, social, emotional growth, and well-being kind of guru. Like, wow. And didn't we talk about what kind of coworker would you like to have here at the station, Thomas? One that's knows kind, interpersonal skills, like. Those are the kinds of skills that we teach in early childhood, is those basic soft skills that are your building blocks for, by the time you get a coworker at 20, 25 years old, you can know that they're going to be a well-adjusted human being who you can actually converse with and isn't going to be a hothead and cause a lot of drama in the workplace, right?
Absolutely. And as we start to wind down, this is, ladies and gentlemen, and those who identify outside of binaries, of what you've seen or heard today is stirring anything inside of you. If listening to these arguments, this conversation with Ruth and Renee, these numbers, the facts, if it's making you passionate, angry, heartbroken, or emotionally, intellectually charged in any capacity, please contact your state representative right now and demand rationality return to childcare in Wisconsin and put an end to this crisis. We have a few names right on the board that Ninja has presented, Mark Bourne being one of them. We have John Plummer. These are all people that their job is listening to you. And if you have a complaint, if you want to know why things are turning out this way, why there is no investment, why we only have $90 million and maybe $15 million attached, invested so far, these are excellent questions. And let your representatives know that you want answers. Ruth, we have a very busy week. We discussed some of these hearings coming up. What are you hoping to see in the next couple of months, and what do you think might happen by January with the end of child care counts?
So I'm not even going to pretend to have a crystal ball about anything that could happen at the Capitol. Tomorrow is a hearing in the Senate. It is the Senate Committee on Economic Development and Technical Colleges, Senator Dan Fine's committee, who is taking up the special session bill that is still alive and well, right? This is the one that's looking at all of the major workforce investments that our state needs, including child care counts is the one piece of it. So that hearing is tomorrow, 10 o'clock at the Capitol. Great opportunity for people, if you can't attend, to at least submit testimony saying to support child care. So we know that bill is still percolating around, still in the, bargaining bin somewhere. And we know that next week the Senate will be taking up those assembly bills. We know there is still this giant surplus. We know there's no resolution on tax packages, which is really going to be critical. And as crazy as it sounds, there's still a part of me that holds out a glimmer of hope that we will see something positive. And I would say, and I tell this to people who do advocacy work all the time, and Renee, this is you to a T because you've been doing this for so long, right? Like, this is a long game, right? Mm-hmm. We need parents to understand that your legislators need to hear from you. Childcare isn't just your problem, right? Mm-hmm. Childcare is something that our state needs to know you value, and you want your taxpayer dollars to go to support that. So the list that you guys had up, really important to contact your legislators. And I'll let Renee take it in terms of like what you think in January is going to happen when child care counts is defunded and child care programs lose significant revenue.
It's going to cost parents more. It's going to be harder for them. I think my parents have heard from me for every month since the budget time started. They know that, so it's not going to be a surprise, but it's going to hurt their pocketbooks more. It just is. And what the long-term effects on that are, I still see children being born.
Okay, that's positive.
So I still have a waiting list of children. I haven't lost anybody yet because I see that they're just going to do without other things, I think, which economically, they're going to pull back maybe on going out to eat. They're going to pull back maybe on other purchases or things like that. So if you want to get into the economics of it, that's not the passion I have.
Right.
So
if you look at, we've got this remarkably low unemployment rate, right? Yeah. And we need to be able to hire people. And if there's no care available, and if it's too expensive, businesses aren't going to be able to hire people. It's going to create unlivable communities for us, especially in bordering areas where we border states that are putting money into this.
The conversation does not end here, although our time together does. I want to say thank you so much, Renee Henning, Administrator at Community Care, Ruth Schmidt. This has been an honor. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
As well. You can go back and check out the stream on dailydodge.com. Check out the sources that we mentioned and find some original sources. And above all, make your own independent assessment of what you think the issue in childcare is and what needs to be done. And you can also contact your representative and senators as well. It's been an honor to be with both of you. I've really enjoyed our conversation together. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
That will do it for
Yeah, thank you.
this community comment. It's 95.3 WBEV, powered by Daily Dodge.